You're listening to Power BI and More with Business Solutions MVPs Scott Sewell and Joel Lindstrom. This episode is sponsored by Enaugic. Enaugic is a leading Microsoft Gold Dynamics CRM ISV delivering best-in-class Dynamics 365 customer engagement solutions, as well as cost-effective and high-quality offshore Dynamics CRM programming services. Enaugic's innovative solution portfolio includes Maplytics, a premier map visualization, routing, and geoanalytics app for Dynamics 365 customer engagement, and Nowlink, that offers a seamless integration between QuickBooks and Dynamics 365 customer engagement and other productivity apps like User Adoption Monitor, Click to Clone, and Click to Export. We thank Enaugic for sponsoring Power BI and More, the Power BI podcast from CRM Audio. Well, Scott, did you have a good Christmas?
It was great. It's always fun. It's nice time with the family and
coming off your food high.
Off the tryptophan, we don't do a big Christmas in terms of presents, but we do a lot in terms of just eating. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. No, we have a great time together. It's fun. So
this is our year in review Power BI episode. It's hard to believe you've been doing this for a whole year, huh?
I find that hard to believe. And not that I don't trust you, but it just doesn't seem like we've been doing this for a year because so much has happened so quickly. It's been surprising how much we've learned over the past year.
Yeah, I mean when we started doing this way back in 2016, I mean Power BI had really only been a thing for about a year. Now it's a 2-year-old.
It's a 2-year-old. It's past that birthday. Even in Power BI at the first year, it kind of grew from almost like it kind of grew out of as an Excel add-on that got reworked into its own application, and then gaining steam as a individual user application that I could then share with my colleagues in a group perspective. And mid-year this year that we added the Power BI Premium, and the orientation really started moving towards this is a tool that you can use in your enterprise. I was in the Microsoft Technology Center in New York last week or several weeks ago, and when I was walking around, and I kept noticing dashboards up on monitors tracking bug reports or budget numbers, or there was another one. There was feature releases or user counts in different areas, and it was kind of exciting that you could. I'm looking over there at this Power BI dashboard, and it's not trying to highlight, hey, look at me, I'm Power BI, I'm Power BI. It was really saying, look, here's the numbers that are important to this business. In this case, the business being Microsoft. Here's the numbers that are important. This is how we as a team are doing. It was just up on a dashboard, up on a monitor on the wall, and people could reference that and say, are we tracking towards our goals, or are we not tracking towards our goals? Very strong reinforcement to that. We also did a project just not too long ago for a food manufacturer, and again the same thing came up. But we put dashboards up on the wall, not to say, hey, look at Power BI. It was like, hey, look at the numbers that are important to this business and how they are doing, and how we're tracking towards our corporate goals. That evolution of Power BI from a desktop application that was sort of work group oriented, much like its competitors, to scaling up to be much more an enterprise orientation, and doing it quite seamlessly, has been an exciting part of the year this year.
Yeah, definitely. Just looking back at the episodes we had, we covered quite a gamut of topics. We covered how to access CRM information from Power BI and do hyperlinks, how to embed Power BI in CRM. But I think if I could sum it up, this was the year of Titanic for you.
It was. It was a disaster kind of a year. No, it was great kind of a disaster.
How many? I got to ask you, how many times have you presented the Titanic dashboard now?
It's probably in the 20 to 25 range, I'm guessing.
This thing has gone on a lot longer than the movie.
Yeah, it really
I thought
has.
that movie was
the movie
long.
went a long time. No, but it's been fun because, and I'm the first one to joke about how often I use it, but it's fun because people respond. They forget about the fact that they're learning something about Power BI, and we just talk about the story of what goes on and looking at how the visual representations tell you something about the story of the Titanic, and people get engaged. And I usually try to call attention to say, look, we've forgotten all about the fact that we're dealing with a piece of technology here, and we're just talking about the stories of how these numbers tell us more about what happened. And that's what you want your dashboards and your Power BI tools to do, is to get out of the way and help you communicate what's going on in the organization using these visuals as part of that storytelling.
Yeah. Probably the best episode, and I'll play a little clip from it here, but probably the best episode as far as response we got and sheer number of listeners was the Kim Manis and Chuck Sterling episode.
Yeah.
Where you interviewed them.
It was great.
What I liked about it is how open they were, and how for people who are in charge of a product like that, just to be that open and straightforward is really refreshing to hear.
They were very generous to be a part of this. So it was good.
I'm here with Kim Manis, Group Program Manager for Power BI Desktop at Microsoft. And so tell me what does that mean? What does that responsibility cover?
So I lead up the product team for Power BI Desktop. We spend a ton of time with customers. We work on prioritizing new features and improvements to existing features, and just figuring out the roadmap for what are we going to do next with Power BI.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
you're seeing out in the future for what things that we're looking forward to seeing.
Totally, yeah.
So you could tell us all those features, but then you'd have to kill us, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, Kim, tell me about. I mean, the product is on such an incredible pace right now. We're seeing improvements. Some of us who've been in the industry for a long time have this. We're constantly surprised at how fast you're evolving and how fast you're improving and innovating.
Yeah.
Tell me, how do new features get onto the product roadmap, or how do they ultimately get into the product?
Yeah, good question. So the product team has a couple different channels where we look for customer feedback. One of the big channels we use is our user voice forum at ideas.powerbi.com. So users can go up there and request new features or improvements or vote for existing ones that are up there. We keep close track of that. We monitor that almost daily and keep an eye on what's changing and what's trending there. So that's one major source. The other major source we use is telemetry. So we look at what people are actually doing, right? We see what features they're using, what they're not using, and we have some hypotheses on, okay, are they not using it because something's wrong with it? Are they not using it because they don't really need it? And we'll do kind of qualitative feedback. So we'll get focus groups, or we'll bring in external or even internal Microsoft users and kind of talk about why something is the way it is and what they'd like to see. Another area is leveraging our customer success team. So we have a team that goes out and works with our large enterprises to help them onboard, to help them build proof of concepts. And we'll work very closely with them on what's blocking some of these larger deals that may have feature requests that don't necessarily bubble up but from individual users on user voice, but might block a larger company from deploying. So there's a couple different channels, but really it's all just about the users and getting that feedback from customers.
I'm here with Chuck Sterling, with Microsoft as Senior Program Manager, with the Power BI team, Power BI and Flow and Power Apps.
That's right.
Community team. Tell me what does that title represent?
It's interesting. So when you talk about program managers, you think somebody that maybe programs or somebody that manages. And actually, we do neither. I haven't checked in a line of code for about 5 years, and I don't manage anybody, so it's kind of an interesting title. What we typically own is we actually either own a schedule or we own a relationship. In my case, I tend to focus on the relationships. So as you know, I look after MVPs in the Power BI space, Power Apps in the Flow space. And then I also have relationships, and I want to go out and help foster the user groups. In case you didn't mention it, we're actually at a user group conference right now.
This is the aforementioned Power BI World Tour here in New York. It's been a long day of conferences, but Charles led the last session and did a fabulous job talking about Power BI governance.
It was a lot of fun, and I have to admit, I've never had a screen come down and try to crush me. And Scott was my hero. He actually held the screen up for the projector, and he was behind the screen, so he missed two-thirds of the presentation.
That's right.
So we'll have to go out and make that up to him over maybe at the bars. In the September release, if you haven't taken a look at the drill through yet.
The drill through. Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. So if you guys don't know Scott very well, he loves the Titanic data set, where you should be able to click on an individual and bring up their biography page of that person. Yep. And this is a ready-made solution for your reports that you've already created.
Yeah, sounds great.
It's good.
Yeah, and we had a lot of stuff about where do you start. Have you seen any new stuff come out besides some of the materials we talked about before? What was the course you recommended? The EDX.
The EDX. In fact, I noticed on Twitter that Will Thompson, the guy who did that EDX course, it was in the studios last week, 2 weeks ago, doing recording updates to that EDX course. And so we'll see some improvements to it, or some updates on it to reflect new features that are going into the product. So we'll see some improvements, some enhancements to that, probably coming in the next couple of weeks with the first of the year. So that was a really good course, and even though it was based on the release, a 1-year-old release version of it, it was really focused on fundamentals, and so it still is valid even if you watch the 2-year-old version of it. There's just some enhancements, some pieces to it that make things easier along the way. But his course was all fundamentals, so it's still valid right now. It's good.
Right, and there's been a lot of changes to the platform, new visualizations, all that stuff. If you listen to our previous episodes from this year, you'll hear about updates to the Power BI desktop and mobile and apps. Have your go-to visualizations changed from what they were a year ago? From all the stuff that's new stuff coming out, what are your go-to now versus what they were a year ago?
I tend to use I use the ribbon chart a little bit. I mean, it's a new visualization that's added, and I think it adds some clarity in how that I present comparisons between a few groups. I think it's a really useful one. I mean, I'll probably wind up overusing it before I find the right balance of when to use it and when not to use it. But that one's been useful. Like this week, we're, like I said, this natural gas this natural gas organization that I worked with recently. I did a whole plot of their the wells that they have. They have like 9,000 wells of different statuses, whether they're abandoned or not. And I compared the way that the Esri ArcGIS map works versus the Bing map, and how those two work together, how those two provide slightly different. They have a big investment in ArcGIS and Esri here, because obviously mapping is a big deal to them. So we talked a little bit about that.
Know where something like a well is, it doesn't exactly have a post office address.
No, and it needs to be highly specific as to where that is, because
you got to be precise.
Leases and all kinds of things going on there that are pretty interesting. But yeah, right. So it was a very good year, and it's funny because the change of pace has been just constant through the year. We're getting monthly releases, and the discipline of the team that drives that has been really impressive. And it's been good to see the change of leadership there, and how that team has embraced Dynamics CRM and AX, and integrating this as a business app, which is fantastic, because we're going to see that same discipline and relentless drive to be the best. That's just going to continue into the CRM team over the next year. Yeah, so it's going to be. We got a good year ahead of us. There's a good year behind us.
You got
We
any,
got a good
you got
year
any
ahead.
predictions with what? You got any predictions with what you see? Where do we go from here? We got a pretty solid platform now.
We
Where do
do.
we take it from here?
I don't have any predictions. I'm terrible about that. But I think the
got one.
common data service is going to play a big part of the plumbing between it as we go. What's your prediction?
I think we're going to see LinkedIn more prominently with Power BI.
Oh, that's
Because you're
interesting.
seeing LinkedIn pop up a lot of different places. The latest one was in Office. Your contact card now pulls in LinkedIn data, and if you start a resume in Office in Word 2016 with Office 365, it now accesses LinkedIn and gives you recommendations for other people with the same role, what optimal wording would be, and that type of thing. And what they've announced is, much deeper integrations across the stack with LinkedIn. I think
Very good.
that would be very powerful.
Solid. So anybody who's looking to change jobs might take a look at that. So very interesting.
So how about you? Anything personal? Are you going to change your shoelaces or something?
I might switch over to blue shoelaces in the spring in January. I think it might be. I think it might be time to make that switch.
Green laces?
No.
Does that strike you?
No, I think I'm going from red to blue. So,
All right.
all right.
Well, good year, Scott, and I'll talk to you next year.
Thanks, man. Hey, it's been fun. It's been a
This
pleasure.
has been the Power BI and More
All right.
podcast with Business Solution MVPs Scott Sewell and Joel Lindstrom. This podcast is a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC. Follow Scott Sewell on Twitter at Scott Sewell. Subscribe to the CRM Audio network of podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, or any place else that fine podcasts are available. You can email us at voice@crm.audio.